And the clock strikes 3. At least Pacific time it does. And here we are. It's Friday. Friday. It's Wednesday. What am I talking about? Maybe I wish it was Friday. It's Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. And what was supposed to be this week, Camera Flask, which then got moved to next week because I had a job in Seattle, which then got moved again. So now I'm doing the regular weekly live stream is what's happening. Brandon, that's now it makes sense. I'm like, what's going on here? Am I in the Matrix? Thaddeus, good to have you here. Chaos. All right, so the first thing we need to do is just a little tech check. I'm on a different camera now. I had where is it? I had this, which is getting boxed up on loaner, the FX30 for about a month. I have shot most of the content for the daily drop on this camera since I got it. And I am now using the A7C2, which is what's being used. And I literally just set it up exactly or as close to exactly as I could to the FX30, noticing a couple of differences. I may be wrong, but I will have to see if my feelings are correct. It's a different sensor, so there's that. So it's not always going to match perfectly. Also, with the FX30, I was standardly, because I'm behind a teleprompter here, setting the camera to 2500 ISO at a 2.8, based on how I have it lit here. Really low, kind of mellow, and it was holding the image just fine. Set it up to 2500 on the A7C2, and it feels like it's about a third of a stop darker at the same ISO. But I need more time. I haven't really, before I send the FX30 back, I'll set them both up, shoot the same exact thing, same exact lighting, and see if there is any difference with the same picture profile, so on and so forth. Thank you for the thumbs up on the picture and sound, Brandon. By the way, because you have an extra week, the Camera Flask eBay Cinema Camera Challenge is now next Wednesday, with submissions coming in, I believe I said no later than Sunday. Ideally Friday, but Sunday. Brandon, I've already received yours. I've received somebody else's already. That means if Caleb, myself, and Ben do our challenges, which we should, then we are coming in at 5. That's a low number. I'd really like to get to double digits on that. So if you are here in the live stream and you are listening, get your butt over to eBay. You're going to win on file size, Brandon. Okay. I still haven't opened up your file, just so you know. But you are, you're winning on file size. What is this thing? I'm just trying to see. I've got something in the UI. I might mess something up in Ecamm. I probably will, but who knows? Because the teleprompter is really small over here. Let's see. What does that say? It says boom, boom, boom. Oh, it says there's a couple of people here. And Pat's here. Pat, how are you? How's your retirement / new job? So, Brandon, that's pretty cocky to say I'm pretty sure I'll win. But let's see what happens. Sometimes Ben and Caleb surprise. They come out with something that just kind of really gets me. I'm not sure how people will react to my camera system. No, it's not a Canon M50, but I'm definitely pretty sure I'm sticking with where I'm going with this. So I have to read the guidelines one more time, but I think I'm following them. And that'll be next Wednesday. It should be fun to all get together again. And to my knowledge, not being on the road. So there you go. So we'll see how long this week's episode lasts, you know, I've been doing the daily drop, and in fact, behind me, am I going to point in the right direction? It's, I always, there we go. Because it's flipped. So this stuff right here, that's going to be a two-part, or two parts, or two episodes of the daily drop for tomorrow and for Friday. So as soon as I'm done with the live stream, I'm going to shoot the first part. I already have some BTS stuff there. And yeah, it's going to be fun, I think. It's especially the second part, depending on how much time I have tomorrow or don't have, and how much I can do to kind of show a couple of different setups. But it should be fun. Brandon says, food related, I've been on a Nona's penicillin soup kick lately. Been using orzo pasta, I believe you're saying. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. In fact, my wife made a great chicken. She's a great chicken soup person, and we had some of that for lunch. And then tonight, marinating in the it's called the refrigerator. The grandparents used to call it the ice box, even though it wasn't the freezer, is beef brajol. So I made those yesterday and tied those up, and now they're, I think, out of the ice box and coming to room temp. They will get seared in some olive oil, then white wine goes in, and we're doing tomato sauce, and there you go. What face? What are you talking about, Brandon? I want to know what that means. So yeah, okay. So that's the food related stuff. And if you don't know what brajol is, it's not always the same thing. If you go to different regions of Italy, or well, really, if you go to Italy, when we were in Umbria a long time ago, beef brajol wasn't a thing that we had. We had what they call brajol, or brajole, or however they pronounce it, and it was essentially a pork chop that you pound. There's no roulade, there's no rolling, and then you season it, and it's essentially a grilled meat. But the Italian-American / American-Italian way, which is really what brajol is when I was growing up, it was generally pork. And what you do is you pound the pork really flat, like you would for chicken cutlet or for a schnitzel or something like that. And it's a combination of generally breadcrumbs. You're using Pecorino Romano cheese or Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, which is not the same as Parmesan cheese, by the way, or combinations. So maybe it's like a shredded provolone and Pecorino Romano. And then you're adding salt, pepper, parsley, generally, garlic. I usually crush the garlic and then rub that onto one side that is going to be the rolled inside part of the meat. But you can also make it beef style. And you roll it, butcher's twine, and then you sear it, white wine, tomato sauce, and then serve with whatever you want to serve it with. But it's not a true, like, well, maybe it is a true braise, because I don't think a true braise is actually completely submerged. But there you go. What's happening, Ono? Good to see you. And I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly. Tong, good to see you. A7C is good. Yes, I have version 2 here that I'm using on a loaner, and that's Ono. I'm going to answer all the comments that are relevant on the channel, but it was a loaner, this camera, and it's going back. But I do have the A7C2 again with the 18-50 DC-DN contemporary lens from Sigma, which I think is a great combo for either of those cameras, FX30, A7C2. But only A7C2 if you're putting into crop mode, if you're using APS-C, essentially a super 35 millimeter field of view. If you don't do that and you force the camera into out of auto or force it out of auto into full, then you'll see this gigantic image circle, which might be fun, but it's not the way we would shoot. What's up, Succotash? Yeah, so there you go. We talking... let's do an at theC47 if it's a question, or we want to start a conversation. Looks like we're going down the food route today. I'm tending to my nephew this week, so it's back and forth to school, and now I'm making dinner. Chicken tarragon-ish. I don't know what the ish is. Is it chicken tarragon-ish dish? Tarragon is an herb that I've started to use a little bit more, but I wouldn't say is in heavy rotation, but it intrigues me and I want to find more recipes using tarragon. I love the smell of it and the overall taste. Something else that I started to use more of recently. It eludes me, but there you go. All right, let's see. Ahoy, Jem. I've been going through the drops from a little bit ago. Love the one on meals. Oh, about crew, yeah. The video supply group I work with is pretty intense about making sure the crew is fed. Yeah, yeah. I was on the phone with a client yesterday, and they uttered the two words. They were just taking the piss. I know they were, because I know this person and they're a foodie, though it was all about trying to figure out how we could come in on this project at a little bit of a better budget than before. And again, taking the piss, I think, but he said Taco Bell, and I said, not on my life would you have me feeding a crew Taco Bell. I mean, more power to people if they want to go get a gordita, a supreme at 1 a.m. And look, I have my favorites from when I was growing up, not necessarily Taco Bell, but fast food that just sort of bring back memories, but it's all garbage. We know that. We've been making Boursin cheese omelets recently. Yes, there's nothing wrong with that. And Boursin is great in a soft scramble as well. But you gotta baby those curds. Not high heat, sometimes taking it off. There's a whole thing. The poulet le extra. Oh, forget it, I can't say that. French Cooking Academy is pretty solid. What is that? That's a chicken. That's chicken with tarragon. Yes. Copy. I'll look it up. All right. Do I think I'll be able to get some BTS from the next trip? Well, it depends. I have a Seattle job, which is the one that got pushed that I should have been on today. And that one is most likely happening. We'll see. Knock on wood. I'll probably head up there on the 15th, so it'll be 16th and 17th. There's a chance I can get some stuff from that. The one that would be out of town, down in the big state where they make some pretty good barbecue, some of the best in the country, that one might be a little trickier. It's going to be very client heavy, and a lot of moving parts, and also the type of project where I need an assistant director, an AD to kind of run the days, because there's going to be a lot of moving parts, a lot of interviews, a lot of B-roll. So I'm not sure if I can, take out the old 15 Pro and get some BTS stills at very least, and then talk about it later on. I will try to do that. I've said it before. I'll say it in the future. As a producer, it becomes the furthest thing from my mind when I'm on a project for a client to create content for my channel or educationally. Sometimes I regret that, because I'd like to be able to have those conversations, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of what we're trying to get done in the project. So, I'm not apologizing for that. It's just the way it goes. But Brandon, if I can, I will. If it comes to mind and there's that moment where I'm finally taking a little bit of a breath, or we're about to, break down the set, strike a set or something that we're doing, and I can get a couple of photos, I will. But we'll just kind of have to see. Those things kind of just tend to be madness while they're going on. It's just the way they go. So yeah. All right, what do we got? I'm excited about these these episodes. I think should be fun. This is more of a do-it-yourself DIY project, which anybody can do if they have access to just a few pieces of equipment, and they want to spend just a little bit of time, and they can come out with something that is very more than usable in production and can just be part of your rotation. So I'll show you this, and in fact, on jobs sometimes when I travel, this is this can be the solution to certain problems, and it's pretty easy. DJ, by the way, many thanks for the set a light recommendation. Already used it to demo setup for social creators we're hiring and how we'd like them to set up their recipe finals. You are absolutely welcome. I think it is a pretty fantastic tool. Rumor has it they're working on version 3. What that's going to be, I don't know yet. I have pretty high hopes for it, but I think it's a great tool as it is. Just get more and more stuff in there so that we can pre-visualize and kind of set things up. And it looks like Cine Tracer, sort of 2.0 is really moving forward as well from Matt Workman. You can find that on Steam. I've downloaded the new version. I've dabbled just ever so slightly with it, but I know he's adding to that over and over and over again. That's not even a thing to say that. He's constantly adding to it or, doing things with that. But as they continue to rev Unreal Engine, he kind of has to rethink things and then decide how he's pursuing the whole, call it game, but it's really pre-visualization, lighting kind of tool. All right. What else do we have? We can talk about cameras. We can talk about food. We can talk about lights. We can talk about your upcoming productions and questions you may or may not have related to those. It's all fair game right now on the live stream, especially because, we can talk about prior episodes of the Daily Drop. We can talk about, I don't care, proposals, budgeting, working with crew. Just throw it at me at the theC47, and I'm game for a conversation about it. And as I always say on the live streams, it's you that really drive where these go. The content that I do that's daily, that's coming from my feeble little mind and what I'm interested in and the things that I'm testing. Some of them I go down these ridiculous paths and realize later on that was it all worth it? Most of the time it is, because I learn things and hopefully even little bits of it are useful to people. But I do know that when I make a 15-minute video about Apple Log and some of my findings and the reasons why, there's always an intention to keep those succinct and short and to the point. But I just start talking, and when you're used to talking to or teaching more accurately people for 1 to 2 to 3 day work in 1 to 2 to 3 day workshops, trying to convey something that's actually educational in a few minutes is really, really hard to do. And I know that, I start to learn my process of how I deliver and what I do. And part of it is that it's in real time. So it's not scripted. I do when I create educational videos, but I don't have an outline. I'm not, I'm thinking through the process, but then I just have to get that out. And I'm trying to make sure it's making sense in real time. So my speed in which I speak is not incredibly fast. And so for some of you out there, it might be better, and I'm not talking about that one comment I got, but it might be better to play it at 1.5x. And I don't have a problem with that because I watch a lot of content between 1.25 and 1.75. Usually when you get to a 2x, depending on the person and their delivery, it starts to become a lot harder to track with it. But I find about 1.5, sometimes if they're a really slow speaker, 1.75 really helps. All right. Pat says, do any of your clients still ask for DVD and Blu-ray? I've got one still. Personally, no, but I don't know if people know this, but for many, many, many years, I not only authored DVDs as a big part of what I did in my company, I also taught DVD authoring. So when DVD Studio Pro, I used DVD Studio Pro 1, which was not called Maestro. What was it called? Oh my goodness. It was a company out of Europe. And then basically what happened was Apple then bought a completely different DVD authoring solution and then released DVD Studio Pro 2. And that was the one that I became a certified trainer on, and I was part of Apple's certified, we call it Train the Trainer program. So first you get trained in a Train the Trainer to teach people how to learn how to, and then be able to teach other people how to use apps. But then eventually a certain percentage of people, I was one of them, became a T3 or Train the Trainer trainer. So I was teaching the T3s. So that was for things like, well, it was DVD Studio Pro for me, Motion, Soundtrack Pro, Final Cut Pro, all that fun stuff. And then I said, forget that post stuff. I'm just going to focus on production. It's true. So the answer is no at the moment, but I do know people who are still asking for those. They want discs. Obviously the disadvantages, unless you're moving up to Blu-ray, is resolution, so on and so forth. Oh no, any recs on smaller light boxes for Amaran 60D that's hanging from the ceiling, so smaller is better. Who has some small ones? And I keep forgetting. I know there's I don't think is the 60D standardly Bowens, or is it that smaller proprietary one, and then you need an adapter to get to a Bowens mount? Because if it's proprietary, then you're going to have to look at Amaran and Aperture's softbox solutions if they have any. If it goes to Bowens mount, then you have a number of options. I think it's, it's heading on to the Amazons of the world and checking to see what might be out there in terms of small, cost-effective soft boxes. And when you say small, do you mean that it can't be as big as the smaller Light Dome, like the Light Dome Mini? Because that's pretty small. It's just not tiny. There's a lot out there. A lot of different, and then the question is, do you want square or round? Are you looking for catch light? Is it, if it's coming from above, what is the job of that light? That's the other thing that I'd be interested to find out. Yeah. Got it. Yeah, because some of the 60s are not actually Bowens mount. They're a different mount, and then you have to adapt up to them. Like Nanlites. Their 60 lights are proprietary, but then you just use a little adapter. It's pretty easy, and then it just goes up to a standard Bowens. And I think the thought process there is when they're creating accessories and modifiers, it's such a small fixture to begin with that they want to be able to keep the whole ecosystem small if people want that, but then they can just go to Bowens mount with an adapter, and then Bob's your uncle. Yeah, so I mean, there's just so many things. You can buy a snoot, if you know what that is. It basically takes your light and it basically focuses it into a small little, area. you can buy snoots on Amazon that are Bones mount, and they're like $15, $20. So, yeah. I just start doing a little research on there, and occasionally you get lucky and, there'll be a B&H sale or somebody else doing a sale, but Amazon for that kind of stuff, unless you're going with Aperture / Amarin, might be a good place to start. So there you go. I just saw the gear overview video from CVP about IBC, and there was a small rig section talking about a new small COB there releasing that had an absolutely microscopic soft dome A. That's kind of interesting. Actually, I'll grab one thing really quickly. It's not going to be totally relevant, but I'll show it to you. Where are you? I'm here. So this is not Bowen's mount. This is for the Zhiyun. This is their little proprietary mount that you would use on the Molus X100 and the 60. And look how little this guy is. I mean, that's just miniature. It's teeny tiny, goes onto their mount. And again, I think the whole purpose is just to keep it small. Do I think this is extremely useful? It's not great. It's okay. But there you go. All right, what's next? I'm ready. There'll be other stuff like that, Ono. You'll be able to find things on... That's part of the fun. Well, for me at least. Maybe not for other people. But I kind of love the research portion of things. Figuring things out. How to make things work together. I'm just staring at so many things here that I have, that I try out and I try to put things together. And a lot of it has to do with the job or the type of work that you're trying to use the equipment with. And then also, it also has to do with the camera system and, the lights that you're using. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. All right. Did you guys talk about the new cooks? Sorry, I'm late to the party. We did bring it up on the last Camera Flask. We started talking about that. And then Caleb shot a video about the Nisi primes, which are about a fourth of the price. Very different, of course. They're not supposed to be the same kind of lens. So pretty interesting things happening in those full frame lens, things. Do I ever suffer from analysis paralysis? I don't know. I know it might be a little bit of a joke there. If I don't think so. I mean, it's kind of what keeps me going is, figuring things out. It drives me bonkers when I can't solve the problem. It also drives me crazy when I misplace a lens cap or a body cap or something that I know I just saw a couple of days ago. That's driving me crazy. All right. But I found it, meaning that did happen to me a couple of days ago. David, I'm currently trying to render my short film, Dead Tone on Premiere Pro, and it's Glitch City. I'm rendering tiny pieces at a time, trying to get a local in a local festival. I can't talk to Premiere Pro as somebody who uses the app on a regular basis, but I can say that over the last few years, for my one particular client, virtually everything we did was in Premiere Pro and After Effects, so Creative Cloud. And some editors just had nothing but problems with Premiere Pro. And then the ones who were like career editors who tuned their system and knew exactly how to get it set up, not a problem in the world. Never heard about render issues or things like that. And that's not a dig, David. It just means that there are people out there who can tune their systems to make Premiere Pro purr like a kitten until until an update comes out. And then, of course, all bets are off and all hell breaks loose. How about the news that the creator was shot on FX3? Of course, the S&P lenses are like 20K a piece. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, look, you have cameras now that are in this form factor that are able to do amazing things. Surrounded by a large feature film crew, and that's an interesting movie because it has two cinematographers. One, I guess, Greg Fraser, I guess, was really in the setup and consulting role, and then I'm guessing the other DP was the one that was there on set shooting, because I'm pretty sure Greg Fraser was doing the second part of Dune, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Did I upgrade? Oh, are you David? Did you update your Mac OS lately? Yeah, never do that in the middle of a project, as they say. David, good to see you. Meaning Gomes. Am I saying that right? I would think so. There's no N before the N. So, or is it? Yeah, no, it's not a Z. Is it Gomes, or do you pronounce it Gomez? Tell me. Let me see. Yeah, there you go. So I'm just looking at the comments. I'm taking it in, see if there's any questions. There's no more questions for me right now. I guess it's the end. No, I'm just kidding. Well, what else we got to talk about? Let's go. We have people here. There's enough people here to have conversations. What do we want to talk about as the next topic? What have you been working on, or what questions do you have about certain things? I mean, we've got a paltry 14 people, but that's enough to get a conversation going. David's on Windows. I know a lot of editors who are on Creative Cloud on Windows and have no problem. But it really, really does have to do with how you're setting up the app, GPU, sort of your storage pipeline, all of that kind of stuff. And nowadays, it's pretty easy to break the system. And I don't just mean Creative Cloud. I mean just in general, because, in the olden days, back during, the beginning of mankind, when we were using things like Avid on giant Quadra towers and things like that, the ecosystem was very different. A system was set up for a particular job. And in fact, in Avid's case, you couldn't put anything else on the box. So the box was sort of, if you want tech support and you want to use that system, it's got to be set up that way. We're now using our devices for everything. And look at what's happening with smartphones. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's our main communication device that we're now using also for production and every aspect of business. Let's see. Oh, you have a good excuse, DJ, for missing the last Camera Flask that I in particular would appreciate. I discovered once I got to the venue I was working the Michelin Awards for my city. Oh, yeah. That sounds good. Yeah, my wife used to do a lot of event photography for a hotel group, and they would host these chef dinners. It was pretty amazing in terms of some of the people that were cooking at those. And I look back on it, and a lot of them were like up and comers, and now they're like they're the Jedis. It was pretty cool. Ate some amazing food, assisting her on those shoots, and we're talking a long time ago. Yeah, the Quadra 950 was it was tall. Not as tall as me, and I'm not tall, but it was pretty tall. It was a ridiculous machine. And the RAM alone, oh boy, that stuff was expensive. You're talking megabytes, not gigabytes. There we go. All right, what we got? There's so much going on right now. And I'm mentally preparing for how I'm going to shoot this next episode. I'm sure I'll F it up, but there you go. Need to replace our EOS R. Would like the same, but better AF and shutter speed, about 2x budget. I like everything I'm seeing with the R8, but that small battery is annoying. Oh yeah, it's annoying. I know Caleb was a huge fan of the R7. What is the big difference between the R8 and the R7? I'd love to know, Brandon. Let me know if you know the answer to that. Yeah, I'd like to know kind of the main differences there. I mean, obviously, I'm familiar with the R5 C and some of the other mirrorless cameras in their line, but those are two cameras I've never used. Shoji Productions, do I use Apple Compressor? I do, and I have in the past, though most of my tapping into that engine now is just in Final Cut to spit stuff out for stuff. So I'm not doing a lot of custom droplets in Compressor. Back in the day when I was using it for, kind of bigger workflows, I was, but I doubt I'm going to do much in the way of tutorials on Compressor. There's so much other stuff out there. And really, for me, I try to focus on production-based education with some production to post-production workflow stuff covered. But I think that's probably the lane I'm going to stay in. But a lot of information out there. Yeah, David said super untech savvy. Don't know about those. I don't edit. Yeah, it's so, it really is, especially with things like Premiere Pro, about tuning that system for that purpose, which means that it might be better for you to see if there's an editor nearby. If you really need to get this out quickly, who really is a Premiere Pro editor, have them open it up and, spit the stuff out for you. R8 is full frame. Okay, copy that. Well, if the R7 is any indication in terms of what it can do and in that price point, then it sounds like a winner. What's the cost? Obviously, Canon is like number 2 right now in AF. So you're not going to have a bad AF system. It's going to be definitely a jump up from the EOS R. So I don't think a bad decision. I definitely wouldn't mix and match, like Sony cameras with Canon. That's just a disaster waiting to happen. You have a big Caribbean community up there? I would like to hear about that. FM. Yeah, I'd like to hear about. I'm reading your FM. Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that. How about those R3Cs and R5C cameras? Well, the R5C is a rock star of a camera. Is the R3C a thing, or is that a rumor? I kind of feel like, and I've been talking to other people about this. When you're talking about just a straight mirrorless video camera, and you're not getting into full frame, this FX30 for me right now is just got a lot of the ingredients that I would look for in a camera, but it's not a hybrid. It's low megapixel still images, and when you look at the R5C, which has come down in price, you're really talking about like a flagship stills camera and a totally different menu system coming from their cinema menu system for shooting video and up to 8K video. So there's so much that camera can do, but it really just has to do with your purpose. But if I've got a young filmmaker who also wants to create a lot of content and start to get some client work, there's a lot of options out there right now. But the Sonys are pretty compelling in terms of the ingredients that they have and what they can do. And I think that everybody's making great cameras right now, but it just depends on your purpose. Is anyone using an EVF they like? All the third-party ones I've used leave a lot to be desired. I shoot a lot of doc style. Ty, are you... I haven't used any of the Zacuto stuff in a while. I know there's some other, solutions out there, but it hasn't been a big area of focus recently, because when you kind of get into the mid to upper tier cameras, they're going to have EVF solutions as part of them. And it seems to be a large percentage of people, not necessarily rightfully so, are using just LCD screens now as their main way of shooting. And obviously, once you start getting outside, once you have a lot of ambient light, once all of those ingredients are part of it, it becomes a pretty big mess, I have to say. So there you go. But planning on getting the port keys for the FX30, but that's more being dictated by budget. Copy that. Massive Caribbean community in the city. We have whole wars over which subway station has the best beef patties. We're about cocoa bread and goat curry all day. And are you in Toronto or thereabouts? I think so, but maybe I'm wrong. No. Yes, maybe. Beef patties. I mean, I grew up in New York City. Jamaican beef patties are a thing for me. Delicious. Yeah, that's good stuff. And don't always have to be beef, but when I was a kid, it was really Jamaican beef patties. And, they call them bodegas now, but there would be that like little corner deli, we would call them back then. And some of them had Jamaican beef patties. Man, those were yummy. Get those hot out of the oven. Delicious. Now I want a Jamaican beef patty. The beef brajol is going to be good, but, there you go. All right. So Ty, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to see what have you been looking at EVFs that, you said the ones you've used leave a lot to be desired. Which ones have you used? Which are the ones that you've tried that that you're not in love with? Yeah, I would like to hear that. It's always going back to food, It's always going back to food. I'm really, chicken soup, delicious, but not going to get me through the whole day here. All right, here we go. Shoji Productions. Other than Logic Pro and Pro Tools, can you recommend a simple to use for Mac audio editing program for simple tasks? Thanks. Depends what you mean by audio editing. There's tools out there from companies like Isotope that you can get that solve very specific audio problems and allow you to go in there and spectrum based, editing and things like that. But I will tell you that if you're Mac based, some of the new tools that they've released in Final Cut Pro are pretty great. The voice isolation in Final Cut Pro now, I don't really have any need to go to Isotope, which was a little buggy and didn't keep up with OS or app-based updates as consistently as I would have liked. And so you've got voice isolation. You essentially have a compressor built into there. If you're just going in and doing simple audio stuff, then I would say Final Cut Pro might be a good solution if you're not adverse to using that. And I'd say prior to this last kind of, we'll call it major update, that wouldn't necessarily be the case, but I think the audio tools have come a long way. Now, that being said, I want to qualify what I'm saying in that after over a decade, we still don't have a mixer in Final Cut Pro, and that's just absolute, poppycock, if that's a word. I've used it before. It's ridiculous. I get the lanes and I get all of that stuff, but just let me go in there and do a simple mix. I don't want to live in the inspector to do a simple mix. You want to take your lanes or your tracks and you want to be able to do that. Fairlight is ridiculous, but I wouldn't say simple. That's a deep, deep application even prior to Blackmagic acquiring it. So simple would be Final Cut Pro. Really simple would be iMovie, but not in a good way. I just, feel like you're losing so much of your control in terms of what you can do with your audio. But simple is Final Cut. Maybe GarageBand. Not something I've really gone into and used. I mean, great for maybe some things for voiceovers and stuff like that, but the tools aren't as strong as Final Cut Pro. Like if I'm going to record a voiceover, usually it's the picture anyway. I'm probably going to use Final Cut Pro for that. I'm sure there are great tools in Creative Cloud for audio editing as well. But that may be, not the route that you want to go, subscription, so on and so forth. But it's cheap to get into Resolve, as cheap as nothing, but then Studio, $300. Come on. What software would I recommend to convert a 25 frames per second video file to 24? Ooh. Tricky. It's not a path I've gone down in a long time, but it's generally very easy to add frames to something and have the cadence hold. It's very hard to go in reverse in terms of dropping frames. Historically, there have been some utilities that are software based that have done a decent job of converting frame rates, but it's really hardware based that you're going to get the best, result. But I'm so far removed from that at this point. But I would say that, like going from 24 to 30 or 23,976 to 29,97, that's an easy route. Going upstream. Reverse, things always look funky. It just doesn't work out. Even if your shutter is set to essentially 180 degrees, shooting at 30, and you have it set to a 60th, and then you convert it to 24, you would think the maths would be fine so that your cadence of your motion blur would be correct. It doesn't generally work out that way. But if you're Mac-based and you have compressor, I would say you just need to start experimenting, and you need to start to hit the interwebs and start doing some research on YouTube and Reddit and wherever else you go to do that research and find out what people's workflows are. In the olden days, it was Creative Cow, but it's probably Reddit where you're going to find answers for that now. What happened to iMovie? It's still there, brother. It's still cranking away. It's still doing stuff for the I would like to edit content, and one day maybe I'll look at Final Cut Pro. It does a lot of things, but if you're using an NLE, that's a bigger sibling to that. In the case of iMovie, it would be Final Cut Pro, or just a Premiere Pro or something like that, or Resolve, even in the cut page. You're going to be really frustrated going to iMovie. It just doesn't have a lot of the tools, and you're going to be looking for them, and it's going to drive you crazy. Kind of like how it drives you crazy potentially if you're on an iPhone and you're using the native camera app, and you're like, wait, I can do an exposure adjustment here, but I don't see any ISO. There's no manual controls. I have no way to actually tell what shutter speed I am shooting in, blah, blah, blah. DJ says sometimes simple in software actually gets pretty complicated. I find that if you're accustomed to offline editing as a concept, multi-track editing is all about wait, something just got covered. I don't know why. About the same, be it video or audio. Yep. And then you just need a good digital audio workstation. On EVF, Ty says, I'm on the FX6. Good camera. The Sony loop is awkward. Yes, it is. And requires additional rigging. Yes, it does. I've rented the Zacuto Chameleon, and it's just okay, but not as sharp as the built-in viewfinders on Sony mirrorless. You know what I would do? Head over to News Shooter, type in EVF, head over to CineD, type in EVF, and see what comes up, because they're the most likely to have information on reviewing and talking about something that's come out in the last year that you may want to, be thinking about. You can use an editor to just conform 25 to 24, but again, even though it's only 1 frame per second less, the cadence and the feel can change. I mean, there's definitely a difference in feeling between 25 and 24. I grew up for a part of my life in Great Britain, and I go back semi-regularly. And, you would think, oh, it's 25 and it's just going to basically look like 24, but it doesn't. Okay, so all right, let's see what we got. Things are actually, people are chatting now. I like this. Lately, I've been pondering. This is from David, dialing back all the tech, autofocus, 8K and stuff, and getting a Sigma FP as a camera. You should go check out Caleb's stuff on that. Cinema DNG, 4K, everything trying to get better, improve on the basics. Not a bad idea, but I would say that the vast majority of the cameras out there will allow you to do that, but you just have to resist the temptation to turn on the other things. I also do feel like you're kind of in the lower cost realm. I hate the way they are ergonomically and the way they look, but the Blackmagic cameras are sort of those cameras to me. I love the little Sigma in terms of form factor, and everything else. It's a neat little camera, but I think you're going to get a lot more out of a Blackmagic camera, and it does think like a cinema camera in the workflow, the menu systems, things like that. I just don't love everything about the actual physicality of the actual cameras. Copy that, Ty, on the EVFs. Thanks. I have done what you said in FCP, but was wondering if there are better, quicker, more direct methods. Oh, you're talking about for audio editing. I don't know. And anybody is free to and should chime in on that. Again, prior to the last big update where we started getting, voice isolation and loudness and some of these other features, it's a lot better now. But I want a mixer. In the digital world, why are people still using things like 2997 and 2398 or 23976 for their frame rates? Well, some of it's camera driven. Some of it is also just, that counting system that exists for 23976 and 2997 really has to do with, well, if your content is ever going to broadcast, it will ever be viewed there. You're already conforming and you're essentially at the same frame rate. A lot of it is a counting process so that it's shitty and it makes my head hurt sometimes when I overthink it, but it all basically comes from to my knowledge, the transition from black and white to color television, and we had a bandwidth issue. And so things like interlacing and number of frames per second were all sort of solutions to transitioning to that, and then still making sure that we were conforming to the electrical system, because obviously we have 25 frames per second in Europe, and we have we'll just call it 30, but our counting system 29.97 here, because of the fact that we're 60 hertz and then over there it's a 50 hertz. You get the basic idea, I think. So I hope that's an answer. It's not really an answer, but it's legacy. It still exists. And there are times where it makes sense. And I would prefer that if I shot content, if I lean towards, let's just say 2398 rounded up, that my content could, be displayed anywhere. Now, I'm not going to shoot interlace footage. F that. That's not happening. So it's going to be progressive for me. But movie theaters don't really care anymore, right? For them, it doesn't matter. It's a digital projector, and whether the aspect ratio changes or the frame rate changes, as long as the projector can support it, it's not really an issue. But the broadcast standards, and especially as you start to get to mid-tier and smaller markets, things are very different, kind of all the way back up to the top of the page there when Pat's asking about, is anybody still authoring, DVDs and Blu-rays? There we go. Yeah. There we go. I think I answered that. I'm scrolling down. Man, it's lively now. The thing is, we're broadcasting in digital. Those frame rates were analog days. I just don't know why people insist. Well, the pipelines, though, what you might think that everything is 100% digital, but unfortunately, it's like, there's MacGyver there, and this paper clips and gaffer's tape and electrical tape. Virtual, but yeah. I don't know if I want to get into 2997 and 23. It would be 976 or 23.98 rounded up more than I have. But again, it was a giant big band-aid to solve bandwidth issues, interlaced because you couldn't push whole frames out there, and then the counting system that came from, going from black and white to color is my understanding, and we had to essentially come up with something so that it all conformed properly, it all got to the living room properly, and we came up with this cockamamie thing we have, at least in North America, which is this 2997, 5994, standards, which are not really a thing in interlace anymore, but they are definitely still being used in the broadcast world in terms of progressive frame rates. For the work I do, what frame rate do you shoot in and why? Well, it kind of depends on what I'm doing. And it's really client driven. There's no hard and fast rule there when it comes to what frame rate you should be shooting in. And I'm not talking about off speed. So I'm not talking about shooting in, 48, 96 or 120 frames per second, 60 being the most common, and then conforming that to a lower frame rate. I'm really talking about the main ones, which would be 23.98 and 29.97. Though 5994 is used a lot, in capture for things like sports and stuff like that, but not to conform to a lower frame rate, because you're capturing more frames per second. And again, rounded up 60 frames per second. Great for nature and things like that. A lot of those shows. But when we are thinking about images that we're drawn to, and we've seen this transition happen in television over the years, a lot of television was 29.97. We'll just round that up and just say 30 for now. And then that was talk shows, that was news, that was sitcoms, that was pretty much all of that stuff. And now if you watch a show, I mean, obviously it's not on air now, but you watch a show like Modern Family, that's shot in 24. A lot of the shows now that are a half hour or 22-minute all the way up to hour-long shows are shot at 24, because there's a cadence and a feeling that we associate with what people overuse as a term, but as cinematic. So, but when you're delivering content to the internet, and you don't necessarily need to do that. Should I be using 23.98 right now for this content, or 24? Maybe, maybe not, because this content is really more sort of real life. It looks more real life, and so 29.97 feels more real life. And remember, frame rate is but an ingredient. into what we consider something being filmic or cinematic or whatever you want to call it. It's just one tiny ingredient. Shutter speed is one of the ingredients. Selective focus. Are you deep depth of field, shallow depth of field? You know, there's not a lot of Citizen Kanes out there, but generally, if we're seeing an image and it's shot with a larger sensor camera, we'll just say APS-C slash Super 35 or full frame or even larger medium format, and your lens is wide open, or we'll just say for APS-C and for full frame at an f2.8, and your focal length is anything past 28, 35 millimeter focal length, you're going to have a lot of fall off in the background. You're going to have a lot of that other ingredient that people consider to have a cinematic, filmic kind of look and feel. But so much of it is lighting, because when the 5D Mark II came out and camera movement, remember, cinematography is about composition, it's about lighting, and it's about camera movement. That's what is unique, the third one, to cinematography, because we have lighting and composition in many other art forms. And when the 5D Mark II came out, it had a full frame sensor, it had selective focus, it shot video, but it only captured originally in 30 frames per second. And we did a project for a client of mine at the time, who I had already been doing projects for, and we had been using 35 millimeter lens adapters. And when the 5D Mark II came out, we decided to use that camera for the production. They were a small enough client that they weren't going to demand a big build, but it was a big enough project where we could really go in there and use the cameras. And the client was Cooper Union, which is a university in New York City, and we shot in really amazing locations. And I had a great DP on that project who now really specializes in aerial type cinematography. And I don't mean stuff for stock. Maybe some of it is, but it's like Top Gun stuff. It's really amazing stuff. But I digress. So we shot that whole project in 30 frames per second, but the whole way that we shot the project and the camera movement and everything else was so much about all of the other ingredients, how it was lit, the spaces, the selective focus, or the shallow depth of field in that case, that you'd really be hard pressed to call out the frame rate on that particular project. I don't know if it's still around. I'd have to go find it, but somewhere on the interwebs. But yeah, there you go. We're past now, and I have things to do, like shoot another episode of the Daily Drop, and then wake up tomorrow and shoot another episode of the Daily Drop. So there you go. Are there any other questions I can answer right now? I don't know. I think you might be glamorizing something from 8 years ago, because I think right now for under $2,000, while I think the F55 was a great camera, I don't believe it captured in 4K. Maybe it did. I don't think so. I'd be looking at other solutions personally. And if you're delivering for theatrical, would you shoot in any other frame rate other than 24? Yes, 23.976, so that you can have your footage just set up and ready to go for other things. Again, digital projectors generally don't give a rat's ass what your frame rate is or what your aspect ratio is. They conform to that. It's quality of image, how rich the image is, the content itself that's really important. I hope that makes sense. Some of this is my opinion, of course, but some of it from experience, some of it just me blabbing. But that's the fun of the internet and what we do. I want to thank everybody for coming this week. Do not forget, housekeeping, that next week is going to be the monthly episode of Camera and Flask. If you go to the live tab on my channel, you will see the eBay Cinema Camera Challenge and what that is. We've already gotten a couple of submissions to that, and it is it's going to be fun. It's you got to go to eBay. You got 20 grand, and what camera are you going to pick? Maybe it's that F55, Brandon. I don't know, but I would love it if we got some more people in. We want to get up to 10, double digits in terms of the submissions. It makes for a lively show. All the guidelines are there on the eBay Cinema Camera Challenge page for the Camera Flask live stream next week, which is Wednesday, October 11th at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Get your stuff done. I agree, Brandon. Great chat. Really appreciate it. Next week, show up with your leaded or unleaded drinks. Send me a PDF by the end of the weekend, and I will put it into the hopper. And I've got to format it all and get it into Ecamm and all that fun stuff. So if you're sending it to me on Tuesday of next week, 24 hours before the show, it's probably not going to make it. But it doesn't take that long. The guidelines are pretty simple. Just put together a 16:9 PDF,